Hey, it's Jeff Cannata with another newest, latest, best mini. This time talking about Solo, a Star Wars story, which I had a chance to see an early press screening of. And I'll give you my 3-word review of Solo, a Star Wars story, which is a review that's shorter than the title of the film. And that 3-word review is prequels are hard. Here's the thing, folks. This is actually a pretty fun movie. It's a pretty decent Star Wars film. It's got a lot of fun set pieces. There's a lot to like about it. It explores corners of the Star Wars universe that we haven't really seen on screen, which is great. It delves deep into sort of that smuggler's mythos that is only touched upon cinematically and has a lot more, obviously, in the comic books and cartoons and novels and all the other ancillary material. But the movies, we haven't really seen too much of that world. And it's cool to see that world in a Star Wars film. We just didn't need to do it with Han Solo or with a young Han Solo. And that's really the problem that I have with this movie, that as much fun as we're having and as much cool stuff as seems to be, the movie's very competent. It doesn't insult your intelligence. It's fun. It's fun. There's cool set pieces, lots of cool stuff. But every time it touches on Han, I mean, it's a movie about Han, but every time it touches on these touchstones, these iconic things from the Han character and the Han mythos, it feels a little pandering and it feels unnecessary. And worse than that, honestly, I never felt like I was looking at Han Solo. And it's no indictment of the actor. It is just that the movie doesn't feel like Han Solo to me. Now, I did not have that problem with a young Obi-Wan Kenobi in the prequels, for example. I always felt like that was Obi-Wan Kenobi, even as many problems as I have with those prequel films. It always felt like that really was Obi-Wan Kenobi. And maybe that's credit to Ewan McGregor. And I also feel like in this movie, I am looking at a young Lando Calrissian, and maybe that's a credit to Donald Glover. And I certainly don't want to make this about the actors, but for whatever reason, the behavior, it just doesn't feel like Han Solo to me, which is subjective and not really fair, I guess, to attack the film on. More than that, here's the real nut of the problem, okay? The original trilogy, Star Wars, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, they are the story of a young boy who is placed on a planet that no one thinks about, is the farthest away from any action in the world. It is forgotten, it is unimportant, it is ridiculously obscure. Tatooine, right? A young boy out in the middle of nowhere who couldn't be farther from greatness, and yet his destiny is to be great, is to be a big part of the galactic story, and his destiny pulls him out of that obscurity and makes him a central figure in a large drama, right? The prequels completely don't understand that. They make Tatooine this very important place that was where his father started, and none of it makes any sense. But the original trilogy also is about this character of Han Solo. And in the original trilogy, the arc of Han Solo is a guy who mostly just keeps his head down. He thinks a lot of himself, but it's bravado because that's the world that he lives in. Basically, he's lived on the outskirts of morality and legality, doing his thing, but keeping his head down, staying out of the way, trying not to get involved in the big war that's going on, just trying to make some money. Sure, he's had some adventures here and there, but mostly that was about this underworld that had nothing to do with the grander story of the rebellion and the empire. And what happens in the original trilogy, his arc, is that he finds purpose. He finds something greater than himself, and he becomes less selfish because he finds purpose, right? So if you have a movie, and no spoilers for Solo, a Star Wars story, But if you have a movie where that is also the arc of your young Han Solo, it doesn't make much sense that he has that arc later. Because if he was always a guy who was pulled into doing the right thing and having a role in a larger, grander scheme, then it doesn't make much sense that he's just this dude who finds purpose later. And this is the problem with prequels, right? The whole idea of Han Solo is he's just some dude. He's just some dude. And yes, there are adventures in Han Solo's past, how he did the Kessel Run, how he got the Millennium Falcon, how he met Chewbacca. All of those things are fun backstory for the character and would potentially be fun to see in a film or in a story. But they are backstory, right? They are fun blips of adventure that don't have this grand arc, because the grand arc comes later. That's what the whole point of the character is. He was not doing the grand things yet. He was just some guy who gets pulled in and constantly tries to get out of it, and just, and the end of A New Hope, when he comes back in and saves Luke and decides he does want to be part of this thing, is his turning point, okay? So that's what making a movie like this, why it's problematic and why it's hard to accept, and why at every moment it just feels like this isn't necessary. While we're still having fun, there's fun Chewbacca moments. There's a really cool, if Star Wars is a space western, there's some cool western tropes that we've never seen in Star Wars before that are done in this movie, space version. That are cool. I had some fun with this movie. It just shouldn't have been a Han Solo movie. Invent some new character, invent some new smuggler, give us that fun, cool side smuggler story. It doesn't need to be Han Solo. It never felt like Han Solo. Every time we see a Han Solo thing, it feels clunky and shoehorned in, just like those prequels. And just like those prequels, it ruins the central idea of what the original films were. And I could go into a whole rant about the prequels, and I won't. I'm sure that's tiresome. But they messed up a lot of the things that were clearly established in the original movies. So while I think this movie is sure to be pretty crowd-pleasing, and I think it's decent, I had some fun with it, it is not the success that I think Rogue One was, which spread out, gave you breadth of Star Wars story and Star Wars mythos by introducing whole new characters and not feeling the need to rehash the same stories with the same characters in a different time period, because it doesn't make any sense that we see the same story. I mean, it's not the same story, but you know what I'm saying? The same themes, the same central character arc for the hero in a different time period. It just doesn't make any sense. He has that later. So the fact that Rogue One found ways to fit into gaps in story with new characters made it so much fun. And I think where these Star Wars stories should live is in breadth of universe. Show us corners and fill out the grandness of the Star Wars universe. Don't delve back into the same heroes over and over and over again just because we know who they are. It's not worth it, and it's not necessary. It's not necessary. So I'm curious what you guys think of the film. Lots to say in spoilers. I'll talk about this movie, obviously, on the /filmcast at /filmcast.com, and we'll do a spoiler version, so when you've seen it, definitely listen to that. It's hard for me to recommend this movie. I think all Star Wars fans are going to go see it. I certainly wouldn't say don't go see it, but ultimately it wasn't a very pleasurable experience because it just kept eating away at hallmarks of what makes those original movies work, which is exactly what the prequels did, and exactly what prequels tend to do, because it's hard to make something stand on its own when it's really there to just sort of fan service existing material. So there you have it. That's my review.